In Book 9, we saw death taking the soul of Shraddhavan out of his body. And since then, Savitri has been following. Wherever death leads Shraddhavan, she will follow. And first they passed through a terrible realm of the eternal night. But her soul was strong enough to survive this ordeal, and they have embarked onto the book 10 of the double twilight. And the first twilight is the dream twilight of the ideal. It's a beautiful world. It's like a dawn world, the magical light of the early morning, where the light is magical and things are seen, but they are not seen clearly and they can't be grasped. That's the quality of ideals. They are beautiful, they're inspiring, they're attractive, but we can't grasp hold of them. And after she has seen that world, death has told her, look, you believe in ideal love and immortality and heaven and truth and all that stuff. That is all just illusion. And he told her that at great length. And at the end of the previous canto, when he said all that to her, I'm reading now at the bottom of page 619, the last line. This is what he says to her. O soul, misled by the splendor of thy thoughts, O earthly creature, with thy dream of heaven, obey, resigned and still, the earthly law. Accept the brief light that falls upon thy days. Take what thou canst of life's permitted joy, submitting to the ordeal of fate's scourge, suffer what thou must of toil and grief and care. There shall approach, silencing thy passionate heart, my long, calm night of everlasting sleep. There into the hush from which thou camest, retire. He's telling her to accept the way things are. You live for a short time, enjoy what you can, suffer what you must. In the end, you will be released from all that. I will come and take you into my long, calm night from which you will not wake up, where you will be absorbed back into the silence and emptiness from which you have emerged. So now I'm going to read on from there. The next canto is called The Debate of Love and Death. A debate. People have debates in Parliament. One party will make a proposal and then everybody will contribute their views. Or there are debating societies in universities. They will propose a particular topic and people will speak for or against. So here there are only two people debating. There is Savitri debating on behalf of love, and Death is speaking for himself, his negative view of things. So the first lines refer to what he had said, which I've just read. A sad, destroying cadence, the voice sank. It seemed to lead the advancing march of life into some still, original, inane. But Savitri answered to Almighty Death, O dark-browed sophist of the universe, who veils the real with its own idea, hiding with brute objects nature's living face, masking eternity with thy dance of death. Thou hast woven the ignorant mind into a screen, and made of thought error's purveyor and scribe, and a false witness of mind's servant, sense. An aesthete of the sorrow of the world, champion of a harsh and sad philosophy, thou hast used words to shutter out the light, and called in truth to vindicate a lie. A lying reality is falsehood's crown, and a perverted truth her richest gem. O Death, thou speakest truth, but truth that slays. I answer to thee with the truth that saves. A traveler, new discovering himself, one made of matter's world his starting point. He made of nothingness his living room, and night a process of the eternal light, and death a spur towards immortality. God wrapped his head from sight in matter's cowl. His consciousness dived into inconscient depths. All knowledge seemed a huge dark nescience. Infinity wore a boundless zero's form. His abysms of bliss became insensible deeps. Eternity, a blank spiritual vast. Annulling an original nullity, the timeless took its ground in emptiness and drew the figure of a universe, that the spirit might adventure into time and wrestle with adamant necessity, and the soul pursue a cosmic pilgrimage. A spirit moved in black immensities and built a thought in ancient nothingness. A soul was lit in God's tremendous void. A secret labouring glow of nascent flower fire. In nihil's gulf his mighty puissance wrought. She swung her formless motion into shapes, made matter the body of the bodiless. In a sad, destroying cadence, the voice sang. It seemed to lead the advancing march of life into some still original inning. So this is the voice of death. He finishes what he has to say. That dreadful voice of his sinks with a sad cadence. A cadence is a phrase in music that comes back to the bass note. When we hear that bass note or key note, then we feel, oh yes, this is coming to an end now. So that music of death's voice is a sad music, and it carries a quality of destruction. It's negativity, it's refusal. So that voice and the words that he says seems as if it will lead life, the advancing search of life, life evolving, developing ever new forms, always looking for new possibilities. It looks as if death will lead all that adventure and attempt and effort into some still, original, inane. Sri Aurobindo uses this word several times in Savitri. Inane, when we use it as an adjective, means something without meaning or significance. Sometimes you may say of a person, he's just inane, he's so stupid, so foolish, everything he says is nonsense. But here he's using it as a noun, and with a capital I, as if death is leading life into some state of meaninglessness, without significance. It's as if he would lead it back to some original state from which life has begun, in which it had no significance.
It is not without soul or something like that?
If we look really at the root meaning of the word, this ein at the end refers to anima, to soul, soulless. So something that has no soul, has no reality or meaning. But the primary meaning of the word as it's used is meaninglessness, insignificance. Suresh.
But Savitri answered to Almighty Death, O thou proud
Sophist
of the universe, who dwellest the real with its own idea, hiding with fruit objects nature's living face, masking eternity with thy dance of death. Thou hast woven the ignorant mind into a screen, and unmade of thought, errors, prayers,
purveyor,
and grief, and a false witnesses of mind, servant sense.
Yes. So she's telling him what she thinks of him, he has told her what he thinks of her. She says, "You are a dark-browed sophist." A sophist is a word from ancient Greek philosophy. Actually, it's connected with the word for wisdom. But those sophists were such clever people that they could use words to say anything, to make any argument. Whether it was true or not, they could make it sound convincing. So that's what she thinks of him, that he's just using words in a clever way to mislead. You are the sophist of the universe. And what you are doing is that you are veiling the real, the true reality with its own idea, its own conception. Here she says veilst. This is because she's speaking to death, to one person. She uses this second person singular, and this st ending is typical of that. We don't use this form in modern English speech or even in writing normally, but we would say who veil, you who veil. But she says who veils. You are veiling the one reality, what is real, with an idea of it. You are also hiding the living face of nature with brute objects, with objects that are not living or only a very primitive life form. You are hiding, it's as if you're putting a mask over the face of eternity with this dance of yours, this illusory dance of death. With your power of illusion, you have woven the ignorant mind of human beings into a screen which is hiding reality. And thought, which is meant to be a light for human beings, instead of that, you have made it into a purveyor and scribe of error. Error is mistakenness. And a purveyor is somebody who supplies things. If you buy nice products that come from England, often they will have a kind of seal, the seal of the Queen, and underneath it will be written purveyor of sweets or tea or something to Her Majesty the Queen. It's the supplier. A purveyor is somebody who provides you with things. So she says, what you have done is you've made human thought, the power of thought, which is a divine power, instead you have made it into a power that supplies error. And it is a scribe, it notes down mistaken things. In the later time, when he was composing these lines of Savitri, Sri Aurobindo's eyesight was such that he couldn't read his own handwriting anymore. And then he took a scribe, our patron, Dr. Nirod Baran. So Sri Aurobindo used to dictate, and Nirod would write it down. So here it's like that. Thought is noting down things which are wrong and mistaken. And you have made the servant of mind, mind servant, sense, into a false witness. Our senses of sight, hearing, taste, touch, smell. These bring us information about the world around us, which gets interpreted by mind. But the problem is that the senses don't give us the correct information always. Or maybe they give us the correct information, but it gets misinterpreted by our mind. So a false witness is somebody who stands up in court and says, I'm sure I saw it, it happened like this, but he knows very well that it is not true. Or else he's misunderstood what he has seen. So she says, all that is your work, death. You have been distorting and perverting and spoiling things. Is it clear? Anybody would like to ask anything about that sentence?
Shraddhavan, I have one question. You have a connection with some reality, the senses, but the true reality. But when your inner sense discovers the true reality, not this reality, is another sense. No? The true reality, not everything, but some type.
I think we, at our present stage of evolution, even the physicists tell us that our senses are not conveying the reality to us. They convince us that the chair, the table, they are solid. But in reality, it's mostly empty space with atoms whirling about in it. And there's the wonderful aphorism of Sri Aurobindo where he says, to the senses, it is always true that the sun is moving around the earth. But to the reason, that is a falsehood. So, yes, I think you are right. We have to wake up to some truer, higher, inner sense before we will be able to perceive reality as it is. Bhavan.
An athlete of the sorrow of the world, champion of a harsh and sad philosophy, thou hast used words to shudder out the light, and called in truth to vindicate a lie.
So she's again telling him what he is. She says, you're an aesthete of the sorrow of the world. An aesthete is a person who enjoys beauty, who's always looking for beautiful things, wanting to enjoy and delight in them. So she says, you are delighting in sorrow. It's as if you're tasting and enjoying all the sorrow of the world. And here you are, when you are saying these things to me, you are a champion, you are fighting for a harsh and sad philosophy. Harsh is even cruel, and sad view of the world. And you have been using words to shut out the light. The true use of speech is to cast light, to bring light, to share light. But you're shutting out the light. And you've called in truth. You say that you are speaking truth, but all you are doing is you are justifying something which is not true, which is a lie, a falsehood. To vindicate means to prove something is right. Varadarajan.
A lying reality is far too strong. and a perverted truth her richest gem.
Continue.
O death, thou speakest truth, but truth that slays. I answer to thee with the truth that saves.
Yes. So, falsehood, the best that falsehood can do, the crown of falsehood, is to proclaim a reality that is a lie, a lying reality, a misleading reality. That's the crown of falsehood. And a truth that is twisted so that it's not true anymore, a perverted truth, is her richest gem, her richest jewel. O death, she says, you're speaking truth in a way, but you are speaking the truth that slays, that destroys. And I am going to answer you with the truth that saves. And that is the keynote of this whole part of the book. We noticed last time how convincing death's arguments are, because they are the way that we think. This voice of death is the way that we normally think. That's a truth in a way, but it's a destructive truth. Savitri, we should pay great attention to what death says and notice that, oh yes, that's how we think. And then we must pay attention to what Savitri says and see that she casts a new light, a saving light, on the same points which he is making. I answer to thee with the truth that saves. So he has given his version of how things are. Now she will give her version. Patricia, would you read?
A traveler, new discovering himself. One made of matter's world his starting point. He made of nothingness his living room, and night a process of the eternal light, and death a spur towards immortality.
So she's taking all these things which he had listed as being illusory or worthless or meaningless. For example, matter. But she says there is one who has taken matter's world, created it as his starting point. He has taken the nothingness, whatever emptiness and void that you keep talking about as the original state of things. He's made that nothingness his living room. He is living there. And this night, this darkness, he has turned it into a process of the eternal light. There's this. Nowadays, there's the modern realization, biologists have realized that death is actually a process of life. And the two things go together. That death is not an end and a darkness. That something, it gets dissolved, and then those elements are used to continue with life. Death is a process of life. So in the same way, she says that night is a process of eternal light. There's a kind of, later he says, a densification of the light becoming so dense that it's like a darkness. But that darkness is only temporary. It's part of a process of greater and greater and greater light. And death. You are making such a great thing about death. But for human beings, death can be just a spur, something that encourages us, pushes us in our search for the immortal state that is available to us.
It's really a traveler means the man.
One, the one who is inhabiting and has made all this out of his substance. He wanted to travel. Later he will say he wanted to travel through time, through space, through circumstance, through individuality. All this for rediscovering, new discovering himself. The one consciousness is traveling in the world, disguised as all of us, experiencing himself in so many different ways. So all this is not meaningless. All this is the great journey of the one who is endlessly and infinitely discovering himself in the world of matter. Is it your turn, Tom? Yes.
God wrapped his head from sight in matter's core. His consciousness dived into inconscient depths. All knowledge seemed a huge dark nescience. Infinity wore a boundless zero's front.
You can read the next two lines, please.
His abysms of bliss became insensible deeps. Eternity a blank spiritual vast.
Yes. So this traveler, this one God, has hidden himself, wrapped up his head so that we can't see him. He's wrapped himself up in this cowl. A cowl is a hood that covers the heads completely. In the cowl, in the hood, in the disguise of matter. His consciousness dived into the inconscient depths of matter. So, all knowledge, which is his privilege, seemed to become a huge, dark nescience, not knowing. Science is knowledge. Nescience, no knowledge. Unknowing. So then his quality of infinity seemed in the material universe to put on, to wear the form of a zero, of a nothing. But it's a boundless zero. There's a very nice little article by Nolinikanta Gupta about the mathematics of infinity. And there he explains about the meaning of the zero, that it is not, it's not empty, it's not nothing, it's packed full of possibility. And the one is equal to the many. So the infinity of God put on this appearance of a zero, of a nothingness. His abysms of bliss. Consciousness and bliss are the qualities of the supreme existence. No? Abysms. An abysm is a depth that is bottomless. It cannot be measured how deep it is. So his abysms of bliss, his immense depth of never-ending delight. In the material world, they got expressed to start with as insensible deeps, deep places, deep spaces without feeling, without consciousness. And eternity, that wonderful divine quality of eternity, seemed in the material world to become something blank, without qualities, a blank spiritual vast. Even human beings who have the experience of the timelessness often experience it like that, as something blank, without qualities. But again, Mother says, that's just because the way our consciousness is not used to being able to experience eternity. Actually, it's boundless, eternal potentiality which is there. So it's as if God, coming into the world as a traveler to discover himself, has turned himself into his opposites, his opposite qualities. Chandra, you'll read.
Underneath original unity, the timeless truth is ground in emptiness and gives the figure of the universe that the spirit might adventure into time and
wrestle. We don't have to say the W and we don't have to say the T. Wrestle.
With utmost necessity, and the soul pursue a cosmic
pilgrimage. Pilgrimage, you know this word, yeah? No? When you go to Sabarimala or to Tirupati, you go on a pilgrimage. Yeah. Annulling an original nullity. Nullity is nothingness. If you annul something, you wipe it out so that it doesn't exist. She says that's what God did. There was a nothingness, and he stopped it being nothing. He changed it. The timeless took its ground in that emptiness, set its feet there, based itself on that emptiness, and drew the figure of a universe, produced all these appearances that are here in the universe. And why would it do that? The timeless, the Lord would do that so that it becomes possible for the Spirit, which is infinite and eternal, beyond time and space, so that it could experience the adventure of traveling through time. Here, adventure is a verb. Usually we use it as a noun, an adventure, but we can also use it as a verb, so that the spirit might adventure into time, and it could wrestle, it could fight with adamant necessity. Wow. You know, wrestling, it's when you fight by holding on to your opponent and then you try to throw him to the ground or whatever. But it's when we have a problem, we may wrestle with it until we find the solution. One of the things that the Spirit has decided to do on its pilgrimage and on its adventure into time is to wrestle, to combat, to fight, struggle with necessity. The laws of physics, the way things are set up in this universe, the way things seem to be set up in a certain way which we can't change. But in fact, the Spirit can change them, and that's one of the things that it enjoys doing. And so that is the purpose of creating this figure of a universe. And another purpose is to enable the soul, individual souls, to follow a pilgrimage, a journey towards a sacred end. When you go on pilgrimage, you're going to some sacred destination. So the soul is traveling through the universe and all the appearances of the universe to reach a wonderful divine fulfillment at the end. Renana, I didn't see you hiding at the back. No, okay. Sarojini.
The spirit moved in black immensities and built a thought in
Ancient.
nothingness. The soul was lit in God's tremendous void. A secret
Laboring
glue of nascent fire.
of nascent fire.
Nascent fire.
Yes, thank you. So, when God enters into the material world, a spirit moves within all these black immensities of space. We can say it is perhaps if we can say this, that it's because there's a spirit moving in all universal space that evolution is possible. That gradually that one discovers himself in time. So that spirit moving in those black immensities built, among other things, a power of thought, of consciousness in that ancient original nothingness. A soul was lit in God's tremendous void, in that vast emptiness. It's as if there's a little fire is lit. A secret, laboring glow of nascent fire. Nascent means being born. So that fire is being born again and again, constantly. It's a glow, it's something warm, quite powerful, full of energy. It's secret, we are not aware of it. It's hidden, but it is laboring. This is a word with a double idea. There's the idea of working hard. It is making an effort, producing things and appearances and happenings in the emptiness. But it also very particularly has the sense of the effort that a woman has to give when she's giving birth to a child. So that glow, that soul is giving birth to all kinds of things as it grows, as it manifests more and more of itself. I've forgotten your name. Tina, Please, yes.
Emil's girl is mighty
Puissance.
wrought. She shrunk the formless motion into shapes, made matter the bodies of the bodiless.
Yes. So she, in that nothingness which death is talking about, in that gulf, in that deep space of nothingness, God's mighty puissance, His mighty power worked, wrought. It's part of an old verb and we only have a couple of parts of it, but one of the parts is wrought. We talk about wrought iron, iron which has been labored into shapes. Here this is the past tense. She worked hard. She herself is just power. She moves without any form. But moving in the universe, in that emptiness, she swung her formless motion into shapes, into forms. She made matter the body of the bodiless. That's what we don't perceive about matter. We don't perceive that it's in fact moving energy. And just the other day somebody explained to me, told me that for her it was somehow easy to grasp the idea of the divine as Shakti, as energy, because that's what the physicists tell us, that everything is energy. Yeah? So energy is formless, but out of that formless energy, which is all moving, these forms which seem permanent to us are made. She made matter the body for the bodiless, the supreme existence which is not limited by any of the forms which it takes.
I feel very amazed that Einstein has said this more than 100 years ago, and we cannot see it, no? He saw it, but we're going on with this, our mind cannot.
Well, our senses cannot.
Yeah.
That's the way our senses are working. No? But at least now it has got into our minds, into our heads. So that's difficult, that passage, no? We had a difficult passage, but I think we'll stop there for today. Has anybody got anything they would still like to ask?
What is it? She from Pushi?
She, the puissance, the conscious force is the Shakti, the mother, yes. Always when he says the power, it's she, So those who can stay, we can read these few lines, 40-odd lines, together. A sad, destroying cadence, the voice sank. It seemed to lead the advancing march of life into some still, original, inane. But Savitri answered to almighty death. O dark-browed sophist of the universe, who veils the real with its own idea, hiding with brute objects nature's living face, masking eternity with thy dance of death. Thou hast woven the ignorant mind into a screen, and made of thought error's purveyor and scribe, and a false witness of mind's servant sense. An aesthete of the sorrow of the world, champion of a harsh and sad philosophy, thou hast used words to shutter out the light, and called in truth to vindicate a lie. A lying reality is falsehood's crown, and a perverted truth her richest gem. O death, thou speakest truth, but truth that slays. I answer to thee with the truth that saves. A traveller new discovering himself, one made of matter's world his starting point. He made of nothingness his living room, and night a process of the eternal light, and death a spur towards immortality. God wrapped his head from sight in matter's cowl. His consciousness dived into inconscient depths. All knowledge seemed a huge dark nescience. Infinity wore a boundless zero's form. His abysms of bliss became insensible deeps. Eternity, a blank spiritual vast. Annulling an original nullity, the timeless took its ground in emptiness and drew the figure of a universe, that the spirit might adventure into time and wrestle with adamant necessity, and the soul pursue a cosmic pilgrimage. A spirit moved in black immensities, and built a thought in ancient nothingness. A soul was lit in God's tremendous void, a secret labouring glow of nascent fire. In nihil's gulf his mighty puissance wrought. She swung her formless motion into shapes, made matter the body of the bodiless.